Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. Good evening. My name is Suzanne Kavik, and I'm president of the League of Women Voters, Newcastle. It's our pleasure to welcome you to our ongoing series, Conversation with the Supervisor. We have these events once or twice a year. Tonight, your supervisor is going to discuss some of the major issues that we have on the town's agenda, and then you're going to have the opportunity to ask your questions. I ask you to hold them until the end of his update, so we'll then, I'll run around with a microphone for you. As you should know, or I hope you know by now, the League is a grassroots organization that promotes the active and informed participation of all citizens in government. We do not support or oppose political candidates or parties, and the League has, for a very long time, since their inception, been very big advocates of voter education and good government reform. So election reform, campaign finance reform. Locally, I think we're most visible with the candidates' nights that we host and our voters' guides that you see with spring and fall elections. Before we get underway tonight, I want to let you know about two upcoming events that we have. First, on April 24th, here at Town Hall, we're going to host a coffee with our legislators. It'll be from 9:30 to 11, a very casual meet and greet with both Senator Harcum and Assemblyman Buchwald. So I hope that you can join us. Our second event that's upcoming, May 2nd, we are going to have another of our nonfiction book group meetings. We have this at the Kittle House. This is at 9:30 in the morning. There's like a light breakfast that's served with it as well. The book we're discussing this time is How Democracies Die by Stephen Levitsky and Daniel Ziblatt. There is a small fee of $20 for that since breakfast is included. So moving on to tonight, our format for this evening is as follows. Rob Greenstein is going to be giving an overview of some of the important issues facing Newcastle, and then you can ask questions. We have some guidelines for those questions. Please keep your questions to under a minute. Please make sure they are questions. Just a statement really isn't appropriate. And as well, please have it be an actual community issue and not of a personal nature. So that being said, I'm going to turn over our evening to Rob.
Thank you. Please keep the applause down. I use that joke a lot for some reason, I don't know why. So first I have a public service announcement. So this Wednesday, March 20th, at the First Congregational Church, 7 p.m., there's going to be an interfaith vigil for the mosque incident in New Zealand, the unfortunate incident, so hopefully everybody can attend. That's this Wednesday at First Congregational Church, 210 Orchard Ridge Road, at 7 o'clock on Wednesday. So, and that's with our Interfaith Council, which really is terrific when, unfortunately, when these incidents happen, they all really come together, and it's, if nothing else, it shows what an incredible organization they are. So, and that's it. So basically, so what I do nowadays with this, I pretty much just go through like my quarterly report. I'm not going to say everything, but I just touch on a lot of different things. I don't. At the beginning, I used to have like 5 topics. Now I just pretty much go through a whole bunch of stuff. So let's see what we got here. So let's see. I announced this quarter that this is my last term. Mike Kaplowitz is his last term, so that's all part of the quarterly report that'll come out after May 31st. But now on to this substance. As far as our infrastructure project, actually work started again today. We were initially going to start working on April 1st, but due to the warmer weather, we started today. They did some surveying work today, and actually they're going to start digging tomorrow. And so now we did the new sewer system has been installed, the new water system has been installed, and the new drainage system has been installed, and Con Ed also installed new gas lines. So now actually the part that's going to make things look better, instead of digging up roads and potholes and metal plates and get everybody annoyed, now we're going to start actually doing work, and then what's replaced are not metal plates but beautiful granite curbing and sidewalks. So hopefully people will. Hopefully this construction is people are more accepting of it, in the sense that it's not going to result in more bumpy streets, but the appearance is going to get better. So the work that they'll be doing over the next couple of weeks is basically from Town Hall to the Shell station on this side of the street, replacing the sidewalk and, putting in the new curbs, and then also doing work on North Greeley Avenue by basically the dry cleaner up to the post office. So they're gonna be sticking on Greeley for the next couple of weeks. And what else? As far as Center Street, we already restored those parking streets going up King Street, but we're also gonna make that sidewalk a little smaller. We have plans out to DOT for their approval. King Street is a state road, so what we do there needs state approval. We're also gonna make the cutout on Center Street a little smaller. The goal initially was it's a traffic calming measure. It's funny, I was reading some of the reports, because we'll also talk about making Lower King into a two-way street, and I'll touch upon that in a second. But I was actually reading some of the older reports that we did, some of the studies, the Volmer studies and some of the other studies that we did, because I was just curious about what they talked about with Lower King Street. And all the reports talk about traffic calming measures. We had Project for Public Spaces and Pooter Design, whatever, they all talk about traffic calming measures. And that's what those cutouts were. It was a traffic calming measure to make the road a little narrower so people slowed down. But, people were upset with it, and maybe the bump outs were too big, and it affected turning radius, so whatever. We re-examined it, and we're fixing it, and that'll be that. There's a time to do it. And the sidewalk was too big in front of Ibiza Cafe. I mean, it could have been a really nice outdoor area, but it was gigantic, so we're making it smaller. And it's still gonna be a really nice area. But what else? Now, as far as Lower King being a two-way street, that too. Now, it is wide enough to be a two-way street, and we would not lose one parking spot. Let me rephrase that. We will actually lose 10 parking spots on Lower King Street, but we will make up 10 parking spots going around the corner due to the fact that would become a two-way street too. So with a two-way street, with the spots that are around the corner there that basically run parallel to the railroad tracks, those spots are right now angled, and we would make them perpendicular spots. Perpendicular? Basically perpendicular spots, so we're gonna gain 10 spots there. So actually, it's not gonna be one loss of spots as far as a net is concerned. And there are benefits to making Lower King a two-way street. So we actually know that it's from an engineering point of view, it can be done, the road is wide enough. We've studied the curb lines. The curb line in front of Starbucks may need to be moved in a little bit. However, that's the reason we're looking at it now, because whether we decide to do it or not, now's the time to study it, because if we move the curb line in, it gives us the option to do it, whether it be 5 months, 5 years, or 15 years down the road. So now's the time to look at it, to decide where to put that curb. And so we know it's feasible. So now what we're doing also, we have our traffic engineers who are actually going to be studying it as far as traffic counts and just how much extra traffic would be on Lower King Street if we did it, and how much less traffic would be on Woodburn if we did it. That's the street that's by the Shell and the old Dunkin' Donuts, the pizza station. And also, if we did do it, the adjustments to the traffic light. Keep in mind, we're getting a traffic light there. So that was something that prevented us from doing it in the past. I think they did it years ago, but that was without a traffic light. So now we're gonna have a traffic light. And there was also talk years ago about four-way stop sign and things like that, but this is gonna be with a traffic light. So this is the first time it's ever being studied with a traffic light at that location, and the traffic light is coming. So, we control Lower King Street. So we're gonna study it, and now's the time to do it. So that's basically downtown construction. As far as downtown Chapacua, apart from the construction, in 2017, we adopted our comprehensive plan. One of the major principles of the comprehensive plan was to increase the vitality of our business districts and to add housing and more recreational opportunities. Actually, I don't have the basketball court in here, but I should add it. Actually, after the next meeting, I will be adding it, the next week's meeting. But basically, so we're putting a basketball court back there, we're expanding the playground back there, and as far as housing, we're redoing our zoning. So right now, we sent out an RFP, request for proposals, for a zoning study, and we got 4 responses, and we started interviewing the candidates. Now, this is not just changing our zoning. What we're doing is, we would change the zoning, but we'd also do the environmental review. So in other words, if somebody comes back, well, first of all, they could come back with a bunch of different scenarios with different densities. So it could be heavy density, it could be medium density and light density. Then we'll decide how much housing we really want and how much can we support. Can we support another 200 units, another 100 units, another 300 units? So we got to figure out what the infrastructure can support, taking into consideration traffic and all the new infrastructure improvements. But then and also then what do we want? And then we eventually decide on what we want, then they're gonna do an environmental review. So basically, if a builder comes in, so right now, let me give you an example. If a builder comes into the Rite Aid space, right now, it says, I wanna put housing there. Now, right now, they're only allowed to do one floor of housing on top of the retail. There's no builder's gonna do that. They're not gonna, it just doesn't make economic sense for them to put that kind of investment for 5 units of housing, whatever it would be. Now, if you tell them that it was gonna be, but let's just assume they wanted to do that. Okay, let's say a builder wants to come in and put 3 stories of housing or 2 stories of housing on top of the retail. They would have to come for a zoning change. That could take years. Then they would have to do an environmental review to see how this project is going to affect the downtown. There's a whole bunch of things they have to study, and the environmental review can take a year and cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. What we're planning on doing with the zoning study is changing the zoning so that we determine what kind of housing we want in downtown. It's not dictated by developers, we're deciding it. We'll put the zoning in place, and we do the environmental review for the whole downtown. So now if a developer comes, let's say a year and a half from now, and they want to look at the Rite Aid space, well, we may already say you can only go up 2 stories, but the environmental review is done, and now you're ready to go. So that's why this process is going to take a year, because it's not just changing the zoning and changing the code. We could do that relatively quickly. It's basically looking at the capacity, how much can we handle, what do we want, and then doing the environmental review. And basically, we control what our downtown is going to look like, the density, and it encourages the developers to come because basically, it's already laid out for them. And that's not to say we can't recoup some of the costs, by the way. When developers come, they could actually still have to pay for the environmental review that we did, but which is the best part about it. But it's already done, turnkey, so to speak. So that's the process we're doing now. We're now interviewing candidates, and that actually, I've said this a number of times. I think it's worth repeating. For years, everybody looks at our downtown and how are we going to, increase the vitality of downtown Chappaqua in the face of the internet, and every downtown is suffering, is dealing with this problem. And we started the Chamber of Commerce, and that helps. And then we increased the beautification budget, and that helped. And then now we're doing the infrastructure, new sidewalks, and making more pedestrian friendly, and that will help too. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, it's the zoning that's going to really help. Getting more people living downtown is the key. More recreational opportunities is the key. And so I think the zoning is very, very important. And we couldn't do it also without, first of all, we need the comprehensive plan to pave the way for it, and second of all, you need the infrastructure. So we got those things in place. So Chapco Crossing, let's see, so they're still doing the road improvements on 117, because they didn't finish the road improvements on 117 because they ran into the winter. They requested temporary certificates of occupancy for some tenants, which we gave them after working with the planning board. So basically, right now, Whole Foods is open, Lifetime Fitness is open, Pet Value is open, Chase is open, Fidelity's coming, and what else am I missing? Did I say Pet Value? Did I say Pet Value? And Fidelity. But that's basically the stores that are operating under temporary certificate of occupancy, only because they haven't finished the road improvements. They're doing the road improvements now, and so, we're working with a traffic mitigation plan that's in place, and the traffic's been great. Most people, have been very, very happy with the traffic flow over there. We were all very concerned about it, and it's been fine. And it's been fine, and the stores are doing okay. I was in Whole Foods yesterday, it was packed. So it's not like fine because nobody's going there. It's fine, it's flowing fine. And so I think we'll be okay. And when they finish the road improvements, it's going to be even better, because the left turn lane, going north on 117 is going to be terrific, and a real right turn lane going south is going to be great. And I think everybody's concerns about traffic, while legitimate, I think for the most part it's been okay. So that's obviously a very good thing. Work will continue. They ran into the same problem that we have with our downtown. The type of work they're doing, they couldn't do in the winter. I mean, last year we were able to do our work in the winter because we were basically ripping up the roads and replacing pipe and then putting metal plates down. But if you're putting new sidewalks, if you're paving the road, you can't do it in the winter. So Summit Greenfield, while they have some drainage structures that they had to put in the ground, at the end of the day, they can't finish until the asphalt plants open on April 15th. So the road construction is going to last until mid-April, but it's also because of it's not going to be continuous work, but they cannot finish until the asphalt plants reopen. And plus, you need warmer weather for the paving anyway. You know, not just the reason the asphalt plants open in mid-April is because you can't really pave until then. And the state won't allow them to pave until the weather is warmer because they want the product to be a good finished product. So basically, that's it. Chapel Performing Arts. So this is a good thing for, literally a year, since the last election, which Friends of Chapel Performing Arts has been trying to get their 501c3 status. They finally got it, like within the past month. It was in February. So that's fantastic, because now we have an organization who can actually go out and try to raise money for this Chapel Performing Arts Center. The town is not allowed to actually, solicit contributions and things like that. So basically, so now they're going to be planning fundraisers and doing membership drives and a lot of fun, creative stuff and capital improvements and really try to raise some money. There's a lot of people who have expressed interest, but we didn't have a vehicle to collect the money, and now we do. And they're going to bring also programming. So not only are we going to have programming from the Chapel Performing Arts, from the guys who are managing it, but also from Friends of Chapel Performing Arts Center, plus our Arts and Culture Committee. So there's just going to be more programming added to that incredible facility. We actually had a really great concert a couple of weeks ago where basically it's called Music Together, and it was a Chapel Performing Arts, the Chapel Orchestra, and they worked with our Every Person's Connected committee, and they had some adults with special needs who performed in the orchestra, and they had some adults with special needs who helped ushering, and we had a packed house, and it was really an incredible concert, interactive concert. People sang and danced, and it was great. And what we're trying to do with the Performing Arts Center is to a certain extent copy what they did in Ridgefield, Connecticut with the Perspective Theater, which is they actually use that theater as a training for adults with special needs to work. Now, initially, I thought they just basically had adults with special needs that actually worked there, that basically ushered and worked the concession stand and lights and everything. But what I learned after watching the movie 25 Prospect Street, which actually we're going to hopefully bring to the Chapel Performing Arts Center, is that they actually use it as a center just to train adults with special needs. So they think of every possible job that a theater can have and bring in kids and adults and train them in how to do those jobs. And they just try to think of any job possible so that they can use that venue to train adults with special needs. And then they work there with their skills. And now that's a huge undertaking, and we'll probably never be able to do that at the Performing Arts Center, but if we can do a little bit of that, that'd be fantastic with the concessions, the lights, just the whole theater, productions and ticket sales and ushering and everything that requires, even landscaping outside. That's another thing. They decided, hey, why are we using a landscaper? We'll have our adults do that. And so they sort of everything. Anytime they use an outside person, they said, why are we using an outside person? Let's train these adults who are anxious to work, give them the skills, and it's incredible. They have 125 people that work at this little theater, So we hope to do that at the Chapel Performing Arts Center. And our Every Person's Connected is a great committee that's going to work with them and really, listen, the Chapel Performing Arts Center, not only can it be a little bit of the Perspective Theater, but it also could be, home to the Chapel Orchestra, and we have our own orchestra, and that could be their home. So really, the potential is enormous for that theater, and these are things that the town the way I look at it, if you're a real estate broker and you're trying to sell the house, sell the town, right? First you got to sell the town, then you sell the house. what are you gonna talk about? What does this town have? I mean, yes, with the downtown, and we have great schools, obviously. We know we have great schools, okay? We know we have great schools. But you gotta have a little more than that, especially with the taxes we pay, and the tax is not going down. I mean, our town tax is only 10%. Counties like the special districts are the couple percent. Westchester is 12%, and the rest is school taxes. They're not going down. So we have to just offer more for people to live here. And so that's more for our empty nesters, and that Chapel Performing Arts Center checks off that box. It's just, if somebody's looking to this community and they look at this Performing Arts Center, it's an attraction. Whole Foods is an attraction. Lifetime Fitness is an attraction. A vibrant downtown is an attraction. That's nice, and that's new, and has new sidewalks and walkable. These are the attractions. This is what we have to do. If you're asking somebody to pay $30,000-$40,000 in taxes, you got to offer them more. So, as far as Chapel Crossing, we're probably this week we're going to issue our RFP for the chap line. That basically is a path that connects the Chapel Crossing to downtown Chapel, comes out North Greeley over there. There's already a pipe in there. It's the county has a trunk line there, and for years there's been talk about creating a path over this trunk line. And we looked at it a couple of years ago. Westchester County did a feasibility analysis for us. They did it for free, and they didn't really do what we asked them to. They basically came back and gave us the price for a 1.5 mile boardwalk. Literally like Coney Island Boardwalk. That's not what we asked. We didn't, that's not the point of this. We're trying to use the existing, there's already a path over the trunk line. We want to clean it up, make it nice. It doesn't have to be paved. It could be crushed stone, but you want it to be lights and people be able to walk from point A to point B. Because as much as people say we should have sidewalks on 117, it's much easier said than done. Okay, because what happens is it's a state road, they require, I forgot the numbers off the top of my head now, but they require you to take, I think like 12 feet nowadays. Like a 5-foot snow shelf, a 5-foot sidewalk or something, then 3 feet on the other side, whatever. And they require you to take the property now also. It's not, when they built the 120 sidewalk, you didn't have to take it, you can just get an easement. Now they require you to take the property. So you're basically taking property from a lot of property owners, and you have to pay for it. So the sidewalks on 117 will cost a fortune, and not to mention that not everybody's going to want to give up their property. So this chap line basically connects Chapel Crossing to downtown Chapel. We did a calculation, 400 homes will be able to walk to downtown Chapel from those areas over there. So it's a pretty nice thing, and that's communities, you have to look at things like that. A recreational trail, that's, the North County Trailway is terrific in Millwood. And if we could have something like that in Chapel, that'd be fantastic, in my opinion. So that hopefully is gonna go out this week. And just an engineering study, and again, looking at all different options, paving it, don't pave it. We got wetlands, deal with the wetlands, go around the wetlands. You got private property, deal with the private property owners, go around the private property owners, deal with security, privacy, all the concerns. And this is the companies that do this is not their first rodeo. These companies specialize in these multi-use recreational trails. So we'll see. Con Ed gas moratorium. This is a hot topic right now. So this is a little bit of a surprise for a lot of towns, that Con Ed basically is declaring a gas moratorium, natural gas moratorium. Essentially, it's not a problem of supply. There's plenty of natural gas. It's a problem of delivering the supply. They don't have the pipes to deliver it. The pipes aren't thick enough, and nobody's putting in new pipelines. You see, the problem is that everybody wants to go to sustainable alternatives, so nobody's going to install a new pipe, which is like a 50-year investment, when you got everybody trying to encourage you to get off gas. So basically, Con Ed is basically saying we can't deliver we can't meet the demand with our existing pipes, and they're offering all these alternatives, but some of the alternatives aren't really economically feasible yet, or even just possible for some people, like thermal heat and stuff like that. It's very expensive to change your house from an existing house. So, but the moratorium basically is going into effect, and it applies to new residential, new commercial, and industrial gas connections Even residential, if you have increased load, so if you have a 3,000 square feet house, and now you wanna go to 5,000 square feet, and you increase your load, it could be a problem. And just people even wanna use it for heating, or, they're not on gas, now they wanna get on gas, it's a problem. Now, there are a lot of things that they're looking at, as far as, building tanks in some communities. They pretty much ruled out our community because it has to be near the pipeline. But, again, the problem is delivering the gas, so they're looking at other options to have gas here, storage tanks, and not here, but in different communities, and just ways to do it. There's even solutions where people could still connect to the gas, but you have to have a backup source. So in other words, if Con Ed, if they're having trouble on a cold winter day and they're having trouble meeting demand, they can tell you, okay, you have to go to your backup. In other words, you have to have an oil tank. So basically, they're gonna cut your gas off if you have, and you can go to oil. So there's a lot of things they're looking into, but, basically, you had to get your applications in by the March 15th. So everybody who's got projects on the horizon got their applications in. And, it's definitely, and there's also, we had a presentation, it's online, from Smart Solutions, and there's a lot of incentives to, just like with solar panels, there's a lot of economic incentives to use these smart solutions, but, for thermal heating and all these other options, but solar, but it's an investment. But, this moratorium is really more gonna affect the builders, and it's certainly gonna affect, some restaurants and stuff. If you have a restaurant that wants to come downtown, now, if there's existing gas lines, it's actually okay, as long as you don't increase the load, but, it's a problem for towns. I talked about the zoning RP and, increasing housing, well, that's new loads, so that's a problem. So it's a problem that communities are gonna be facing and have to deal with it. And even though they're calling it a moratorium, it's a lot of people have pointed out that this is not temporary. This is a new reality. And, we'll see. Now appliances are coming out and everything's becoming more energy efficient, and, so maybe they can cut back on the usage, and who knows, but, it's a problem right now, and it's not just a problem for our town, it's a problem for a lot of towns, and it's a problem for economic development. So they're gonna have to, figure it out. People are upset because nobody really saw it coming. It has been talked about a few times, but very, Keenan Bean did a terrific presentation, it's actually on our website. Keenan Bean are our town attorneys, but, I think the New York Post is the only people who saw this coming. Because they used this as an opportunity to criticize Governor Cuomo a couple of times when they were talking about, when Con Ed was sending out some warning signs that we're heading towards a supply problem. The problem was that the warning signs were, everybody just thought they're just warning signs for the future. Nobody realized it was coming so quick. I don't think anybody realized it, including Con Ed. And then all of a sudden, boom, they declare the moratorium. So it was a problem. It caught a lot of communities by surprise, a lot of builders by surprise, and we'll deal with it. But it's definitely an issue. So that's the moratorium. I know everything else is not really that sexy, but we got our new community sign out there. It's fun. School, town, Greeley boosters, all different messages up there. We got school safety, we got a Newcastle police officer at the schools 5 days a week, at all time schools in session, so that's important. Years ago, if we had this conversation 5 years ago, people would have been upset. We have an officer with a gun in the school, a little Johnny's gonna see a gun. Now, if you don't have an officer with a gun in the school, people are flipping out, so that's unfortunate times we live in right now. But, it is what it is, and Newcastle Police are doing their part. We have a great relationship with the school district, and we will continue to have an armed guard at the school when school's in session, until the school kick us off. But I don't think that's gonna happen. So, what else we got? I'm just going through again my quarterly report, so I mentioned some things, we lost Joan Corwin December of last year. So ever since then, we've been trying to think of something, how to honor her. And somebody came to us with an idea about naming Hunt's Way, Hunt's Place. Wait, Hunt's Lane, not Hunt's Place. Hunt's Lane, renaming it Joan Corwin Way. And so we opened a public hearing last week. I think we have written comments open till maybe next Friday, if I'm not mistaken. And then we'll most likely vote on that. And, we've got only positive feedback on it. There were some people that were concerned that we would be renaming Hunt's Place, which is the road where our new affordable housing project is coming. And Ed, you raised that concern, and I had raised that concern as well. And there was no way we were naming that road Joan Corwin Way or Place or anything. Because she was vehemently opposed to that project for all the right reasons. And but we are renaming the road that the bus company is on, which is a different road than the affordable housing project. And it's not just the affordable housing project. I shouldn't even call it the affordable housing project. It's the affordable housing project without a blade of grass. But whatever. That's not why Joan was opposed to it. That's for sure. But so that most likely looks like it's gonna happen. If it does happen, then we hope to have maybe a ceremony in like maybe September, because we have to give people, the businesses, a chance, including the town. We have our recycling center there, we have our DPW department there, and everybody has to change their addresses. So we have to give all those businesses and time to change their addresses and to get ready. And it's a name change, a street name change, so it's a big thing. Our pooper scooper law. So we held a public hearing on March 12th. Again, this is just my quarterly summary. We held a public hearing on March 12th. And again, we left this open till I think Friday for public comments, not this Friday, actually this coming Friday. And then we'll probably vote on it next week. Now, something that I wrote in my supervisor report, which has caused some confusion. I said it applies to, if your dog does business or her business on, public sidewalks and open space and public space and also on private property. But it's not, your own dog can do whatever they want on your own property. It doesn't apply to that. It only applies if somebody else's dog goes on your property. So I've had to, I've gotten a few emails from people like all upset. Who are you to tell me that my dog would do whatever? They're right. I would be in violation too. You got 3 dogs. So, recreational marijuana. So, we previously passed the local law banning smoking in our parks. We also raised the age here in Newcastle. You have to be 21 to buy tobacco and vape products. And then we also passed a local law limiting where vape shops can go. And now we are passing a local law. We're just amending our vape shop law to include dispensaries, where they can go, and also farms, because you have to grow the marijuana someplace. And now that it looks like we're heading towards that in New York State, so we wanted to get ahead of it here in New York, in Newcastle, and along those lines, we also sent a letter to our senator and assemblyman, basically saying that, hey, if you're going to pass this law, make sure you allow us to have local control. Don't preempt our local laws. We should be able to decide where we want these dispensaries, if industrial areas, that should be low. That's how it is in Colorado. We should be able to decide where we want the farms. Money should be put aside for education and things like that. And there was a couple of other things we asked for, but basically, if that's where we're heading, then we at least, you got to respect the local municipalities, because our position is, and like many other towns, it's going to be felt at a local level. So they have to, respect our zoning and provide funds for education and things like that. So, what else? 91 Bedford Road, that's the location of the old Whispering Pines. And that is now going to be a 3-story building, which includes 14 market rate apartments and 3 retail spaces on the bottom floor. And that actually was as of right. They didn't need a zoning change for that. They just before the planning board for site plan approval. And they did the demolition, and then they're just waiting for their permit to begin construction. So, but that'd be nice. Again, that's consistent with the comprehensive plan. North County Trailway, this is just a little thing, but it's important. We always tried to get our little replica train station over by Millwood, and we couldn't do it because it's actually, we're asking, the replica train station would go on North County Trailway property, which is actually owned by the state, but leased by the county. And for years, it was talked that the state was gonna give it to the county for $1, just a whole trailway. And basically then the county has to maintain it and everything else, all the responsibilities that come with it. So nobody was giving us approval to do our little replica train station because they were in limbo as, who was gonna own it. Then, of course, it didn't help that, Estorino ran against Cuomo or whatever. But, so we were in limbo for years. And they had this 25-year lease that was expiring on December 31st of 2018. And now transferring ownership is actually a big deal because you don't just say, okay, here it is, give us $1. You have to send out surveyors and survey the whole line to figure out where the property lines are. Because when you transfer ownership, you gotta basically deal with the exact property lines. So it was actually a big project. So they just extended the lease, which is fine, and that allowed the county to go out to bond to do some capital improvements. They couldn't even go out to bond until they had a lease extended, and nobody's gonna loan them $8 million with 2 months left on their lease. So now they extended their lease. They can still work out the details of the transfer, but at least they have a new lease in place. And it allows us to now pursue our replica train station, because at least now we know we're dealing with the county, who has possession, they're gonna be controlling it for the foreseeable future. So we're gonna be pursuing that again with our little replica train station. We gotta figure out how to fund it, but that's another story. Sunshine Children's Home, one of my favorite topics. So they are now in the process of expanding their facility. That's on the west end of town, literally the corner of Newcastle, where it basically meets up with Ossining. And it's a 33-acre piece of property. It's a hospital for children with severe disabilities, and some of them are terminally ill. And so it's a big expansion, and it was a very controversial process, never before the town board, but they are currently doing the construction. Neighbors are still very concerned about their well water. And again, this is all part of my quarterly report. So this 2 weeks ago, we had the town hydrologist here talking about the water usage, and they've been doing baseline studies where they basically will compare how they are, what the level of the wells is in the reservoir and versus what it's going to be down the road, so they can compare it and make sure that nobody's well dries up. People are concerned, but if you actually listen to the experts, it should be okay, but we'll leave that to the experts. It was the source of a lot of litigation that made its way through the courts. Those cases were dismissed. One case is still pending, that had approval from the planning board, but the big approval was from the ZBA, and that case went all the way up to the Court of Appeals. So now construction has started, and that's the status of the Sunshine Children's Home. Seasonal limitations on motorized leaf blowers, another fun topic. This topic, we passed the reusable bag initiative, years ago, and we definitely got some pushback, but it wasn't that bad, Some of the more controversial subjects in Newcastle, I guess, was the reusable bag. What else have we had that's really been controversial? I mean, obviously Chapel Crossing and Conifer. But every so often we do like a local legislation where it stirs people up. Even our pooper scooper law stirred people up a little bit. Only against my private property thing. But this leaf blower legislation has stirred people up. People like their leaf blowers. There's no question about it. And people also don't like, government telling them what they can do on their private property. However, there are negative health effects that affect all of us. We all breathe the same air. So unfortunately, you can't do whatever you want on your private property. There are some restrictions at times. And leaf blower bans are one of the things that we're looking at. Now, it was raised by the Sustainability Advisory Board, who do an incredible job, and there was a lot of pushback, and they basically have been working on redrafting it and hearing the feedback and coming up with other alternatives. So, we'll probably be talking about that again soon, but, there are ways to handle it. Everybody's also concerned about not only, don't tell me what to do on my property, but also they're concerned the cost, right? If a landscaper can come and use a leaf blower and spend 5 minutes, well, now they're gonna be there for 2 hours raking. First of all, the leaf blower ban wouldn't even apply in the fall, but people use them all year round, leaf blowers. So, there's concern about the cost and things like that. So there's ways, in my opinion, that everybody's interest can be addressed, and other towns have done it, where you're focused on the type of equipment that you use, but whatever. We're gonna deal with it with the Sustainability Advisory Board, and hopefully try to come up with a solution that addresses, there's really 3 things that we're trying to address. One is the carbon emissions, and there's no question that you have these, what is it called, the 2 stroke engines release tons of carbon emissions, like crazy amounts of carbon emissions, but they have 4-stroke engines, which are much better. It's like having a car without a catalytic converter, the 2-stroke engines. So the carbon emissions is one major problem. Another thing is the noise, although we do have a noise ordinance. And then the other thing is the pollutants that are thrown up in the air from these blowers. And then, there's some people who say we should go with electric blowers, but they don't do as good a job. They still blow up the pollutants. And whatever. So it's actually an issue that it's one of the small issues, but it's really got a lot of people going, But it's all good. So I guess that's it. Take questions? Anybody has any?
Any questions? I'll come to you.
Okay. First of all, I'd like.
Wait.
Oh, okay. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your service to the town of Newcastle. I'm not sure if anybody's ever served 6 years before, but
I don't know.
you deserve credit for that.
Thank you.
So I do have a question.
Got my
During
head
your
examined.
tenure, during your tenure, did you encounter any unexpected issues, and is there any advice that you can provide to the next town supervisor?
Did I encounter any issues? No, honestly, the job is not, it's like anything, you learn what you have to do. I think it's important that we have a town supervisor, though, that works hard for the town, and that's what I tried to do. And I don't mean to turn this into about me, but I think my advice for the next town supervisor would be, you gotta work hard for the town. This is, the analogy I've sometimes used is that if you go to an expensive restaurant, you expect good service. And this town's an expensive restaurant. It costs a lot to live here. And you want your representatives to be responsive. And, and I don't want to come across as political. We're heading into political season. But I think that contested elections are very, very important in this town. I think if you only have one party who dominates, and again, I don't mean to be political here, and I'm not being political, because I know I can't be political, but this is actually what you guys do. It's being contested elections. I think it's very important for this town to have competitive, contested elections to keep our elected officials, honest is not a good word, accountable is a better word. If you think you're just going to win every time because of your party affiliation in this town, you become lazy, and I don't mean to call anybody lazy, but that's just natural. If you're always worried about your next election, though, it'll keep you on your toes. So I think it's very important that the town continues to have contested elections so that nobody takes it for granted, and get people that are focused on the town, and being responsive and communicating. So I just think I just think that, to me, that was what I tried to do, and I think it's important that the next supervisor continues to do that, because I think people expect it. And not because maybe I did it, but just because I think that's what they deserve. Just like if you go to an expensive restaurant, you deserve a level of service. And, these people that live here a lot of them are, successful people, and they could be demanding, and that's fine, but you give them what they want, and you're not you can't ignore them. It doesn't work. I learned that from my law practice. If you ignore people, it doesn't make them go away. You gotta respond and address it and deal with it, because the problems are not gonna just go away. And we need to stay competitive in this thing, and that's why I think we need people that are focused on the town, and 100% focused on the town, and not higher office or anything like that. Because we have to stay competitive with other towns. And, we all have to sell our homes. And in order to sell our home, if you want to sell your home and get a decent price for it, we need people who want to move here. And they're paying a lot in taxes. And, you got to offer them more. The schools are great, but listen, I've always said I wanted to come up with a mantra years ago, not just great schools. And then people say, oh, it's too negative. It's got to be more positive. But the truth is, we can't just be great schools. We have to be more than just great schools. I don't even know if that answered your question.
Yeah, it does, thank you.
But as far as the most challenging, did you ask what was the most challenging of something, or something that surprised me?
Yeah, was there anything that, it just seems to me, I know it's a part-time job,
Right.
being town supervisor, but it seems to me you've made it a full-time job. That's what it,
Well, not
you're
really, but I
always
appreciate
there.
it.
So
I couldn't
I'm just
pay my
wondering,
bills if I did that.
was it more than what you really expected it to be? Anything like that?
The what I often would say is, and I've been through 3 elections, I can handle my law firm, I can handle the supervisor's job. When you throw in the election, all 3 go to hell. Excuse my language. But the truth is, all 3 don't go to hell. My law firm would go to hell. Because the supervisor and the campaign are sort of intertwined. And now, my law firm really wouldn't go to hell, but it would suffer a little bit. And that's the elections are the problem. Every 2 years is the problem. And it's just state law, and I'm not complaining, even though it sounds like I'm complaining. But that was the hard thing. The elections every 2 years is a problem. And it's 6 months, and now this year it's 9 months. And it's a lot. So it's a part-time job, and you're trying to do your full-time job, and now you have this campaign to worry about. And it's a problem, and it's that, that's part of the reason why I'm not running again, because I don't want to deal with another election. I don't want to deal with 6 or 9 months of having to do that again. It's just too time-consuming. So that's been the problem, is the campaigns, and for me. It's unfortunate that it's every 2 years. It's good, it keeps people accountable. But it's a time suck, to be honest with you. That's a problem. It's also hard to get things done in 2 years. So after your first election, how much you're running literally a year and 5 months or something after you just started. So it's hard to prove. You don't have you could do some stuff, but it's just the 2-year elections are a problem in my opinion. Whatever. It is what it is. And the partisan stuff I can do without too.
Any other questions?
When is the traffic light coming into town? What is estimated, when are they gonna start working on that, and when will it be operational?
Yeah, I actually asked that question today. We had the construction meeting this morning. The actual light is probably one of the last things, and that may not be till October or September, but the pole will probably be around the time the sidewalks come, which could be the summer, the actual arms. And the thing about the traffic light is some of the things we're dealing with is, you got a box. If you look at traffic lights, first of all, our arm is going to be a nice arm. It's like a decorative arm that matches our lampposts. And then you got these boxes that keep the electrical boxes Now, if you look at some traffic lights, you see in this job, now I look at all these stupid things, I look at traffic lights, and some of these boxes are like mounted to the pole, which looks terrible. So we don't want our box mounted to the pole. We tried to bury the box, they wouldn't let us, but we're putting it someplace where it's gonna look actually nice, a nice black box. So those things you're gonna see probably this summer, the pole and that box. But the actual light probably won't be hung and operational until November.
Any other questions?
When we have the Lower King Street study done, will it include getting opinions of the merchants and the residents?
Yep. It's definitely gonna include opinions of the merchants and residents. But, and that's all gonna factor in, just like anything. But, we'll see. I mean, I personally am gonna I'm gonna hear residents and merchants, but, I mean, listen, there's been, some people have been very vocal about it, and some merchants have been very vocal about it. Don't kid yourself. There's plenty of merchants who think it's a great idea. They're not gonna say anything because they don't wanna alienate others. Just like with Chapel Crossing. There were plenty of people who lived around Chapel Crossing who were very excited about it. But they didn't want to be vocal because they didn't want to upset their neighbors who were adamantly against it. So there are some merchants who see a benefit in having hundreds of cars pass by their store at dinner time. And there's also that understand that, driving into Lower King Street and having to exit the train station and possibly getting stuck in traffic between 4 and 7 o'clock Monday through Friday is not the best thing for their business. But they're not all going to be vocal about it. I've had residents come up to me, they're not saying anything on Facebook, but I've had plenty of residents that come up to me to say, just do it. Just do it. It makes total sense. We said, no, we got to do the study, we're doing this, they said, just do it. Like, we can't do it, it doesn't work like that. But I am going to listen to everybody's opinions, but there's plenty of people who are giving us opinions that are not making it vocal. They're not making it public. You go on some of these Facebook pages and you do an opinion that's against what other people are saying, and all of a sudden you get attacked, and they just don't want to deal with that. So yes, I'm going to listen to all the opinions and not just the ones who are vocal. We know who's against it. Some of them have been against it for years. But, and let me tell you also, if we were losing parking spots, I understand. Losing 10 parking spots would be a problem. But not when you're replacing them right around the corner. I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the loss of parking spots. There's 15 stores in that street. Okay? If anybody's gonna say, I'm gonna go out of business because 10 parking spots are being displaced around the corner, and again, these are 15 stores that share those parking spots. There's not one store that basically you're saying, I'm going from 16 spots to 6. These are 15 stores that share it. And they're all being replaced around the corner. There might be reasons not to do it. But moving 10 parking spots around the corner, in my opinion, is not good enough. That's just my opinion, though.
Any other
Listen,
questions?
and let me just say one more thing about that front. What we're doing, now this is really important now. What we're doing now at the streetscape, we are already putting in new curbing and sidewalks in front of Starbucks. It doesn't make sense, in my opinion, not to do it so that at least you have the ability to have a two-way street there. We're replacing it anyway. Whether moved it over 3 feet or 2 feet, whatever it is. You were doing it now anyway. So we might as well do it, even if we decide to go ahead and change it and make it a two-way street. The traffic light's already coming. The timing would have to be changed, but the traffic light's coming. It's literally paint on the road at that point. And if it doesn't work out, you just get rid of the paint and you put it back the way it was. It's literally paint on the road. Again, there may be one curb by Starbucks which could have to be adjusted, but it's being adjusted anyway. But at that point, it's just paint on the road. And if it doesn't work out, we go back to the way it was. So in my opinion, again, I'm not saying we're doing it, I'm only one vote. It's silly not to try these things. I wanted to bring a pedestrian plaza to Lower King Street on Sundays. There was one merchant who was adamantly against it. A lot of people thought it would be great for the community. Have a pedestrian plaza, they have that in Peekskill. It's awesome on Sundays. A lot of towns are doing that on Sundays. Put some tables out there, have a nice pedestrian plaza. We didn't do it. I said, why don't we just try it? A couple of weeks. Just try it. We didn't do it. Just try it, that's all. Just try it. If it doesn't work, we go back. Again, we're getting the traffic light anyway. It's timing. And what I've learned from Chapel Crossing, and literally is a guy going to the box and doing a computer and fixing the timing. It's really not hard. So to me, it's something that should be explored. And what I've said to people, just Google revitalize downtown one-way street. I'm sure you can Google other things where you get other articles, but I'm telling you, Google revitalize downtown one-way streets. And you will see tons of examples of towns that have changed one-way streets to two-way streets to help revitalize their downtowns. And if we're trying to revitalize our downtown, I think it's something that should be explored. Now, the traffic consultants may come back and say, forget it. It's not going to work. It's going to be a nightmare. Then that's the end of the story. But if they come back and say there's actually benefits, and it makes sense to do, and by the way, our traffic consultant, what I've recently learned is that the guy who did Matt, you're going to really like this. The guy who did the Volmer report, this guy Lugio, whatever, I'm not sure his last name, he worked on the Volmer report years ago. The same guy. Now he works for Sam Schwartz. And he's the guy who's actually studying did the traffic up at Chapel Crossing, and he's doing a study here. So it's not just a traffic firm, they also do planning and stuff. And he actually did the Volmer report. And, we'll see what they say. But it's not just about traffic, it's also about planning for downtowns. And we'll see. But I'm definitely not going to rule it out, just because some people, think that it may not be good. And by the way, when people talk about the quaintness of downtown, we're getting a traffic light, right? So much for the quaintness, right? And by the way, Greenwich has traffic lights, and Southampton has traffic lights, and all these beautiful towns have traffic. The Berkshires, traffic lights. You could have a quaint New England town with traffic lights. So it doesn't ruin the quaintness. And turning this one-way street into two-way street is also not going to ruin the quaintness, in my opinion. But again, it may not work. And then that's that. But at least I know we tried. It's the same with the Chapline. There are some people who didn't even want to try the Chapline because there's some residents, let's face it. There's some residents, we're talking about 4 private property owners at Chestnut Oaks, and there's some people who don't want to see the Chapline happen because it's going to increase people that walk by their property. And I get it. But I think we owe it to the community to at least study it. They may not be happy, but what people have done when they've done these multi-use recreational trails is they deal with those issues. How do we deal with the privacy and security and all these things? I'm not saying we're going to do it. The price tag may be too high, but I think we should study it. I think we owe it to at least study these things and not just to shoot it down because some people are against it. My subtle opinion, my humble opinion.
Do we have any other questions? Thank you, Rob. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you.